Hello and welcome to Grant Writing in the Age of AI, integrating AI into your 2026 grants plan. Melody Hernandez. I'm a consultant in San Francisco, helping primarily small to medium-sized nonprofits with grant work and grant adjacent work. Um, I am a reluctant AI user who has been learning how to use AI most effectively so I don't have to use it very often. Um, and I'm here with Fielding. Fielding, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I'm also a consultant in the grant space, primarily focused on federal grants for small to mid-sized nonprofits. I am an avid AI user, but I also have a lot of skepticism about the way that it's currently being deployed. So I spend a lot of time in the space thinking about how to do this better for grant folks. And I also just love working sort of on like the capacity building side as it relates to grant professionals. So whether that is AI, whether that is federal grants, whether that is streamlining systems, like these are the things that have always, I think, captivated my imagination about the grant about grants work. So I could foresee a day when I don't write grants anymore and be very happy, but still be sort of in the space and helping others do their jobs better and more effectively.
Wonderful. And this is meant to be a little bit more of a discussion. So folks, you're welcome to unmute yourself and chime in as we, kind of move forward. We do only have a half hour though, so, please be mindful of the space that you take up in this limited time we have together. So this discussion is focused on how to integrate AI into your 2026 grants plan. And so let's start with that you need a grants plan, right? And for each individual grant, you need a plan. I would say number one, do not look to AI to help you create the plan, the program plan, the organizational plan, any of that. So if you don't have a plan yet, take a step back and start there. You should know what you're trying to accomplish with your grants, and the work that the grants are meant to support going into this. Fielding, you want to chime in on that at all?
No, I think I just want to reiterate that the worst use of AI right now is to outsource strategy and to outsource creativity. Some of the very first studies showed that AI increases the creativity of the least creative people, but decreases the creativity of the most creative people. And so when you are in your zone of genius, which I assume that if you're on a call about grants, that's your zone, right? You're more creative than AI. You're better at your job than AI is. And so let's use the things that are uniquely human to be great at our jobs and let's outsource some of the other stuff to AI. And we can talk about what that is, but it's not the strategy.
Yes. I actually was at an event in the last week with somebody who who focuses on Copilot as part of her day job. And she said folks are using AI like it's a Swiss Army knife and really it's a hammer, right? So I think that's the part that we need. And also I just want to say like kind of at the end of every sentence I say about AI, it kind of ends with like right now or not yet, right? Or whatever. Like we are talking about AI as it exists currently and it adapts really quickly. It's growing, it's changing. What I say right now might not be as relevant in 3 months, but as of right now, AI is more like a hammer. It does what it does well, just like a hammer will hammer in that nail well or pull out that nail, but it's not gonna have do all the things that a Swiss Army knife can do. Trying to use a hammer as scissors is not gonna work, right? So how does it work? How does it work well?
And
Fielding?
Melody, I would complicate that a bit by saying that I really think of AI as a tool shop. It's almost a tool of tools. It's an ecosystem where tools can be found and made. And if we don't know how to make the tool, it's not going to do what you need it to do. And so when I think about AI, And a lot of the challenges I see grant writers running into, it's that they actually truly do not understand how to control the AI. They don't know how to build a tool that actually works for them. And so what they get out, to your point, sort of the if everything looks like a nail, or if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So when you don't know how to use it, you get a hammer.
Hmm.
But I think the more that we can learn how to build tools that work for our workflows and design workflows using I think the better off we're going to be. So I would argue that I think we can create the tools in a Swiss Army knife, but we have to know how to melt down the metal and reuse the wood to create a different tool.
Great.
And sometimes I will take an analogy and really kill it. So
I know,
that
I
may be.
love that. And I love it like when it starts as like a tool metaphor and now we're suddenly talking about like angels or animals or that's what I always do. Now suddenly it's a different metaphor. Okay, so ways to make it work well. Fielding, you just touched on something, training it, right? If you're going to integrate grants AI into your grants plan for this year, number one, in my opinion, is start with a paid version, right? So you have your information there. You're not just, kind of getting general information. It's really, getting your information. You're feeding it your well-written grants, your well-written program plans, your well-written strategic planning stuff. If you don't have that yet, do that first, right? And train it on what you want it, the quality and the language and all that good stuff that you want it to provide as an output. You have to sometimes think of AI as being like an intern, right? Somebody who's coming in and doesn't know a whole lot, and you're having to train them in. Don't expect them coming in like they're a seasoned professional. They are coming in not familiar with what you and your organization are trying to do, and you're training them in almost in a similar way that you would train in an intern. In fielding, let me know if you do it differently. But to me, if I had an intern coming in, I would give them information. I would give them my well-written grants and say, read this. I would I would point them to the client's website and say, check out their website, right? I would train them on the existing language and orientate them about what we're trying to accomplish. I would have them read the organization's, strategic plan, right? These are the types of things that you're training AI by feeding it in.
And something you're not saying out loud, but I know you would do, is you would train them on how to write a grant.
Hmm.
So it's not enough to provide AI with examples of your work. I call that context. It also needs instructions. How do you
Yeah.
actually write a grant? And
Yeah.
if we assume it knows how to write a grant, we are giving up our driver's seat. We're essentially saying AI knows how to write grants better than I know how to write grants.
Hmm.
It knows more ways to write grants than I know how to write grants, but I know how to write grants really stinking well.
Yeah.
Right? I have $135 million saying I know how to write grants. So
Yeah.
I don't want a generalized understanding of how to write grants. I want it to write like me.
Yep.
And the only way you get to that is to instruct it. So when I talk about like controlling AI, we've really got three main levers. We've got our prompt, which I like to argue becomes obsolete when you do the other two really well. One of them is context, right? What can you give to the AI physically? Like what are the documents and websites that you can feed it? But then in addition, what is what are you trying to achieve? And so in this case, if it's writing grants, and I would say there's a difference between foundation grants, right, and federal grants.
Hmm.
These things are constructed differently. We have to give AI exactly the formula that creates a grant that wins. And we
Hmm.
know that in our heads because we're fabulous grant professionals. It's getting it out of our heads and onto paper so that we can train the AI to do the thing we need it to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, usually what I start with, if I'm going to start with something, I would start with, I have this really well-written proposal about a really amazing program, and now this funder wants me to fit it into their specific character count limits. That's what I start with, right? The
Yeah.
the easiest thing to the best way to use AI and use it very strategically and use it to really do what we're trying to do, which is take time taking the time that we're spending doing busy work, outsourcing that busy work to AI so our time can be spent on more strategic work, right? To me, it is busy work to say, I have all this information already. It's just not in the format this funder wants. It's not in the character count this funder wants. Be careful with character counts though, because AI
It's
is
not
not
great
great
at
at
it.
that.
Yeah.
So sometimes I found it to be better to say, let's say that I have 3 pages of content or a page of content and I need it to be, a small answer. I might say, reduce this to a paragraph. And that actually does better than, make this, X many characters or whatever, right? But that is something that, it is what I find to be one of the best ways to easily integrate AI in a way that, really reduces the amount of time that you're, in a quick and easy amount of time, you can reduce your workload. It's the
Well,
quickest,
and
the
then
first way.
pairing that with the additional context of the funder's language, the way the funder describes what it is they're interested in funding, you can really quickly shift the language
Mhm.
to be honest and true to the way that you talk about your organization while reflecting to the extent possible the funder's language, right? And we know that to be a best practice. That's always been a best practice. It's just easier to do now.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the second part I was going to say. So it already has your really well written proposal language for another proposal. You can link to the website or upload the RFP or whatever it is of the funder and their language and what they're trying to do, and it will do that. Now, but here's the thing. You don't just take what it wrote and cut and paste it and say that's my final draft, right? You do again, it's like an intern. Would you ever just take what an intern did and submit that as a grant proposal? Probably not. I hope not, right? You're going to read it and you're going to read it with that critical hat of how can I train this intern better, right? And that's the framework that you want to use. What am I noticing here that this AI didn't do well that I can then give it better instructions next time, right?
And I will say, when you and I started having these conversations middle, early 2025, one of the biggest challenges with AI was that it would make up information pretty readily, right? So if you didn't say, don't lie to me, right? It might lie to you. It might make up a citation. It might make up a website that didn't exist. It might make up data numbers that you didn't give it. The nice thing is that it's getting better at not doing that, number one, just naturally. Not naturally. It's being trained out of it, right? Um, this thing isn't, ever evolving. Okay, that sounded really odd. Okay, but secondarily, in most LLMs now, you can put overarching instructions that will control the entire environment. So we can say things like, be less sycophantic,
Yes.
argue with me, right? You can
Tell me when
you
I'm wrong.
can
Say, I don't know if you don't know.
exactly,
These are
exactly.
some of the
And
things.
then we can repeat that in our instructions within projects or custom GPTs or however you're
Mhm.
using your LLM. And so I now very rarely come across made up information because in my instructions it says if you don't have information you need, ask me for it.
Mhm.
Which is also something you have to train interns to do, right?
Yep. Yes,
So an
that's what I was
intern
just
will
gonna
just
say.
skip
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, there's my dog.
If I don't tell a new staff or an intern or whatever,
Yes.
like when I give you a proposal to read and edit, I'm not looking for you to tell me good job. I will be annoyed if you just say, "Good job, Melody." That's not why I'm sending this to you to edit. I'm sending it to you to rip it apart. The more you rip it apart, the happier I'll be, right? And that's the same kind of thing that you need to kind of train your AI to do is, and also like one thing that I think to look at AI is like when you're training it, when you're talking to it, direct, direct language, clear instructions. And I think a lot of us might be realizing that the problem we're having with AI is that we're actually not clear communicators always. So yes, very direct, tell me where I could make this better. Another one that is a good one is like non-obvious ways to improve this grant, right? To improve this proposal. That brings me to the next way. So first way is just take this information and translated into the funders requirements. My next way, most strategic way to use AI currently as of right now is having it, reading your proposal that you've written, your first draft of your proposal, and giving it the rubric and telling it, how could I make this better? Right? Where should I make improvements? Not necessarily make those improvements for me, but where should I make improvements? Where could I be getting more points? Am I missing any of the points that, I could be getting otherwise, right?
Yep. Do
Fielding?
we have anybody in here who does federal grants? Amy, I see you. You already know about this, but I'm curious if there are others. I'm going to drop a link here, and I've built a suite of AI tools, and you can use a couple for free on a trial basis. But to your point, Melody, one of the first things I built was a reviewer for federal grants, right? You essentially upload your narrative, you upload the scoring criteria. It not only scores your proposal, but it gives you like you're going to miss 3 points and here's why and here's how to fix it. So like gone are the days where I feel like I'm writing federal grants all by myself. Like I have a second set of eyes to actually really look at something because when you have been deep in a federal grants process for 6 or 8 weeks, you've lost sight of like the big picture, right? It's really easy to do. And so, not that I think everyone should be writing federal grants by themselves. In fact, I think a team approach is way better. But when you are solo in a nonprofit or you're a solopreneur, using AI as a checkpoint along the way can be really, really helpful. The other
Mhm.
thing I'd say, and Melody, you might be getting to this, and I'm sorry if I'm skipping ahead, you can tell me to stop. Pick the thing you don't like doing and build the tool to do that thing. Like that's how I got into AI. I don't like writing budget narratives. I already wrote the budget. I already have a project plan. I already have a narrative. Why do I have to write a budget narrative?
And I
And
will
I
tell you
know
why, because
why.
I've been on review panels with people
I
who cannot read a budget. They need it written out in paragraph
totally.
form, or they're like, ah.
Yes, we need it, and I don't want to have to do it. And so again, the very first custom GPT I ever made was to turn my light item budgets into a budget narrative. And it saves me hours. And also, I just don't have to do the thing I don't like doing.
Yeah.
So I think the way to sort of jump into this is to really think like, what do I hate about the grants process? And is there a way to streamline that? Is there a way for me to spend less time doing this thing that I really don't enjoy?
Yeah. Now, I'm curious though, because I know a lot of folks maybe like their least favorite part is like the prospecting part,
Mm,
but I
mm.
personally haven't found that AI can do prospecting very well yet. So if that's something that folks, I would recommend that maybe folks learn that skill a little better versus currently until AI is maybe a little better at that. Do you kind of agree with that or?
I 100% agree. In fact, I've tried so many tools and I've wasted so much time coaching new businesses on how to do this right because they're like, try my free tool. And I try and I'm like, it has the same problem all of them have. And they're like, well, no, we're solving for that. We know it's a problem. I'm like, well, then quit asking people to pay for a product that does not do what you say it does, first of all. Um, oh, you said something else. Oh, what I will say about prospecting. So I don't think it does a good job at finding opportunities for you. But what it does a great job of is speeding up the analysis of
Mm,
whether it's really a good fit. So again, taking this from like the federal context, I have a custom GPT that is accessible through this link. You put in the RFP and it spits out a one-page overview, right? So an RFP might be 60 or 100 or 200 pages long, and like I used to have to truly read through these to make sure a client was a fit because
mm,
sometimes there's something hidden on page 60 that either makes it the perfect fit or the worst fit.
yeah.
And so it's not enough just to look at the overview. It catches those weird red flags. It catches those little extraneous things that the funder has buried, and it's really important. So, to the extent that like I when I'm helping a client make a go no go decision, we can use that to feel really good about either moving forward to me reading the entire thing and then paying me to do it,
Hmm.
right? Or saying, okay, because of X, Y, and Z, we're not going to move forward on this. So I think it
Yeah.
can speed up the process of prospect identification and assessment. But
Hmm.
I agree. I don't think there's a single tool out there that is not relying on more traditional like web scraping and matching, certainly powered by AI more and more. But we as individual users going to something like a ChatGPT, a Gemini, whatever, it's not an efficient or comprehensive way to look at what might be available.
Alex, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I just had a question about that because I know something sometimes similar to what was mentioned earlier about just kind of hallucinating. I think that's the term that's used when it just makes up stuff. Is to what degree do you also go and like double check that what it found in a 60, 70 page document is actually correct? Now, I know it's really good at reading what already exists. It's less likely to hallucinate and whatnot, but there's like how much to what degree do you find that you trust that initial analysis and don't go back, or do you ask it, can you cite where it says that so that I can
Yeah,
go,
that's
is that what it
exactly
is?
what you do. Tell me what
Okay,
page you found that on, and then you
Yep.
okay,
go and look for
got
it
it.
yourself and look at
And
it
I
Yeah,
in
think this
context.
also just reiterates the importance of already having expertise and not trying to do something you actually don't know how to do with AI.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer. If I ask AI to write me a contract, it sure does look fine. But a lawyer knows something doesn't look right. And so I think in the same way, when I get an overview back and it says something funky that I was not expecting, you better believe I go figure out what's going on. And the
Mhm.
reality is RFPs are sometimes conflicting.
Yes.
And we as grant writers often reach out to program officers and say, "What the heck?
Yeah.
On page 12 it says this and then on page 72 it says this, help."
Yeah.
Right? And then they'll just like quote us something back that also is not helpful. So
They'll
so
say, read the RFP, and that'll tell you what the.
and so I think, AI can't be better than the confusion that you give it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes but again, this is why an expert plus AI is great. AI by itself is not useful,
Yeah.
really,
Do
right?
not have AI. Do not look to AI to coach you or train you how to do anything. There's tons of resources out there to coach and train you how to do development and grant work better, right? It's not going to train you. Again, it's the intern. And I don't know if you know this about interns, but you shouldn't get an intern in an area that you're not an expert in. If you don't know anything about social media, don't get an intern to do your social media. You get interns to learn from you what you're an expert in, right? And that's what AI is going to do. If you don't have those tools to do this, again, as of right now, and the way AI currently exists in the grant world, please don't look to it to teach you how to do something. Look to experts in the field to teach you how to do things. Tons of resources out there for that. Once you know how to do it, AI is your little helper. All right. Any other thoughts? And for those who join late, we are recording this, but I'm happy to pause the recording if there's anything you want to say that's not on the record. But happy to take any additional comments or questions.
to go back to the tool analogy, what you just said too is kind of like don't pick up a tool you don't know how to use, especially if it's a power tool. Like I used a rotary saw one time. It was my first time using it. Very not great. I would never try to teach somebody how to use one having picked it up for the first time. But just to your point, it's like it's an augmenter, not a creator.
And you can
Yeah.
actually cause more harm. And so the one that I always use is the jackhammer. Like, can you give me a jackhammer and tell me to dig up the street? Sure. But the hundreds of millions of dollars of damage I'm going to create probably wasn't worth putting the tool in my hands in the first place, right? So like
Fielding, I
Yeah.
want to watch you jackhammer your street so bad. I feel like you'd be a natural at it. I feel like you would just be like the perfect jackhammer ever from day one.
it
Um,
would be bad. It would be bad.
all right. So a little bit of recap, number one, if you don't have a paid AI, that's where you start. Figure out which one you want to use. I don't think Fielding or I have any that we're pushing these days. Do your research on that. There's lots of tools out there to help you figure out what's best for what you're looking for. Once you have that, you're feeding it the accurate information, and really well written program plans, proposals, organization, strategic documents, things like that. You're using it to help you take existing content and fit it into funders. You're having it help you rephrase what you're already writing in alignment with how the funder phrases things, so that they're kind of getting their own language back to them. You're using it to help you vet funding opportunities that you've already identified as potentially a good fit, but they're kind of helping you quickly, find out if that specific grant or if that specific funder, if there's anything that maybe you missed, that would make it not a great fit. And you're teaching it with very clear communication. You're giving it all the prompts, that are helping it to, not be a sycophant, to tell you the things that you need to be told.
And Melody, can I add one more sort of workflow thing that I really recommend people
Yes.
start playing around with? And that is when you are talking with program folks or even, a development director, a development lead, and you're talking through either funders or opportunities, or you're talking about a new program for which you will be writing grants, please just grab a transcript of the call, right? So you can even set up Zoom in a room where you're live so that you can grab that transcript. But grabbing that transcript, feeding that into AI, and then asking it, based on everything you know about our organization, can you help me build out an initial grant template based on the programmatic information discussed in this transcript? Can really help you start to think about new writing. So I very much agree with Melody that the best way to use AI is to take human written work and have AI sample from it, essentially copy and I mean, it's not copying and pasting, but it's picking up on the way that you talk about things and saying it in different words. But I think we can, with a lot of caution, use it to draft initial language as long as we remain in the driver's seat when it comes to program design, strategy, evaluation. It does not create those things for you. It will, but don't let it. Retain that control, because that is really where our expertise lives, right? Is making sure that those components are realistic, reasonable. These are things real people have to deliver on ultimately. So don't hurt your team by submitting grants that have unreasonable goals or deliverables in them.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I think is helpful, and it's also, is maybe uh a good way to start, because sometimes when proposals with deadlines and there's a lot of pressure to get it in and you're trying to use a new tool and it's frustrating. This is why part of the reason why I was a very reluctant AI user is I think when I first started using it, I was trying to use it for maybe a grant that's due soon. I'm getting annoyed. I'm trying to teach it while I'm also trying to learn how to teach it, while I'm also having this deadline looming. And I was like, I could do this faster without it, right? So one way that's maybe helpful is, let's say you get a decline, right? The pressure's off. There's no deadline. Now you can ask your AI, tool to say, why do you think that this got declined? Right. And what, again, feeding it the same thing, but maybe that's where you start. So there's not that pressure to have everything done and done perfectly by the deadline. So that's another way that I found it helpful. And we had to file a protest for a grant that was declined by the city, and we were very emotional. And we had they're like, you have to file your protest within 36 hours or whatever. They sent us on New Year's Eve at 4 p.m. We were pissed and not wanting to really sit down and read through what our protest was, right? So that was a situation where, I actually fed into that client's, paid GPT. Here's the documents, here's their decline letter, here's the part of the RFP that talks about how you're, under what circumstances you're allowed to protest. can you help us come up with a draft of, and it was a much more reasonable and calm first draft than what the client or I would have been able to come up with. And then we edited that, right? But it just provided that kind of like language formatting that was, without all the expletives that maybe the client and I would have the personal attack. So, that I have found it to be helpful as well, is to kind of, I'm too emotional to have a logical response to whatever, this situation is. All right, 1 minute over, but I think pretty good. And I think if you're wanting to continue the conversation, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also going to send a follow-up email with a link to the recording and some, links to other resources that you might find helpful. And we'll also have another one of these in February that we'll send you invites to. And Fielding put her LinkedIn link as well. So thank you all for coming and looking forward to connecting again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.